So Let's Find Out is a show about Edmonton history. I started it when I was historian laureate. And our Emerald connection was just, we did a whole season last year about how humans and nature shape each other. This is the third show that Trevor and I have worked on together. We really like collaborating on stuff.
Yeah, we started off in community radio at CGSR, doing environmental news, and yeah, community radio is great. Podcasting is a great future for community radio. So I guess I'll jump in. Since I work more behind the scenes, I wanted to start by sharing some recommendations about the technology that you should be getting to start a podcast. So I'm assuming like we're small organizations, but hopefully we've been able to wrangle a small budget to get this going. And I know that there might be a temptation to try to just use your iPhone and record off the table, an interview in the round with your iPhone. I think if you want to do this seriously, then I'd really encourage you to get your director to give you a little bit of a budget so that you can get some good equipment, because you'll really start to know the difference. And personally speaking, what I really loved about getting into community radio and then later podcasting was, starting to be able to hear the differences in the podcasts and radio shows that I listen to, and like being able to hear, oh, that's in a studio, or like this type of sound comes from being in the field. What Colleen was talking about, like recognizing what a cold open is, or like different ways of structuring your story. It's really fun to be able to hear something and then try to make it yourself. So what I'll talk about quickly is just some resources and some equipment that you can use to start doing that. And Chris will share some of his tips too. So one thing I'll just quickly say is that you should check out Transom, and I just put that in the chat. It's an amazing resource directed for public radio types, which means, completely broke people. So that's like us. We don't have a lot of money, but it has good recommendations for the equipment and techniques and how to structure your stories as well. The one thing that I would say is essential for doing a podcast is a dedicated audio recorder. And so the reason you would want that is because this piece of equipment will have very clean electronics, which means you're going to get really clear audio with no noise in it. But it's also great because it's very versatile. You can plug in a microphone. So it comes with built-in microphones usually, but you could plug in an external microphone for better audio. You could plug in multiple microphones sometimes so that you can have two people being interviewed at the same time. You could plug in a mobile phone and then record a phone conversation. You could hook up to a mixer if you want to record a concert. You could use it in the field or in the studio. So it's going to be really important. If you have a very, very small budget, then the best option is probably the Zoom H1N. And Chris has a Zoom H1. So this is currently $160 Canadian, and it's a surprisingly great piece of equipment for that price. I personally use more like small Sony recorders, and these are not like dictation devices, so you just have to make sure you're not getting the voice recorder, but it's a little bit of a step up. And then if you have a more substantial budget, but still only like $400 or $500, then you could get something like the Zoom H5, which has more options for hooking up microphones. And I think, Chris, you can even do like 4 channels, right? You can have like 4 different microphones going in.
You can take off the top and add more extra stuff. I haven't tried it with more than 2 channels, but yeah.
Yeah, so those are great options. So once you've got your audio recorder, you probably want to do something exciting, like go into the field or like go interview someone in their house or their workshop, or in the forest where they're doing their work. So that's what an audio recorder is for. When you've got that, you'll probably need some microphones. So I'll just quickly give you a quick introduction to what you'll be looking for. So your basic, this is a Rode Reporter microphone. And this is just a basic dynamic microphone. Dynamic means that it's not very fragile. So it doesn't matter if you hit it a little bit and it bounces around at the bottom of your truck, it's good. It's also omnidirectional. So if I'm interviewing someone, I'm interviewing Chris, and I hold this between us, it's going to pick up my voice and it's going to pick up Chris's voice too. So an omnidirectional microphone is great if you want to capture a conversation two-way. The other thing you might use is a shotgun microphone, which is very directional. So it's only going to capture audio in one direction. And that could be good if you just want to pick up the speaker and you're outside and it's noisy. You want to isolate the voice from like construction sounds or like the sounds of a waterfall or something. Another option could be a lavalier mic or a lapel mic. So this is what you clip on, and this is wireless. So that's really great because it means that someone can be walking around their workshop and you don't have to worry about following them really closely with your microphone. But this is going to be a bit more. Those other two microphones are $100 to $200. A wireless lapel mic is going to be $400 or more. So it depends on your budget. And also you'll need a dead cat. This is not an animal. This is something that's going to block wind. So you just stick that, Chris is showing it, you just stick that over your microphone and it kind of dampens the wind. So that's really important if you're doing audio outdoors. Yeah, it also could be a Muppet in a pinch, if you need a Muppet. So we wanted to take a little bit more time to talk about finding guests. So Chris, do you want to take over?
Yeah. I would say a great place to start is start with just your personal network. Build up a list of people who are either doing interesting stuff or have interesting brains. Let's Find Out is a podcast really driven by questions from listeners, some of whom are on the call right now. Hi, thanks for tuning in. So I have sort of an endless list at the back of my brain of people who have interesting perspectives, and I try to rope them in whenever I can, especially when I think like the show could use more perspectives from like people who have experience with like art or some curiosity about gentrification or like a background knowledge on colonialism or something. Sometimes I'll poke people and just say, hey, can you come on our show and ask a question? Also, I have some people in the back of my head who I go to whenever I have topic specific knowledge I need, and I don't know who to go to. I have like a couple of friends who I'll be like, oh, hey, this is the person I can ask about where to find a geologist or where to find somebody who's curious about Métis history and like has some expertise on it. So start with your personal networks and kind of snowball from there. No shade on any executive directors who might be on this particular call, but also I would say don't interview executive directors as a general rule. The reason I say this is because executive directors of organizations tend to have a lot of knowledge about their field, but less hands-on personal experience on the front lines of a thing. Also, they're often very media trained, which often creates a situation where you have somebody with a lot of talking points and no personal stories that they can or will share. Whereas if you have someone who's like had their hands in the thing, you can get some great stories that you might never have gotten if someone wasn't like doing the thing day to day. An example of this is like on our podcast, we often talk to archivists. So in one episode, we were talking to an archivist about like what it's like going through people's like boxes of memories to try to decide what to keep and what to throw away from what they donate. And I asked an archivist once, like, what's an example of something that you wish they'd taught you in school for this field? And he said he wished that they'd taught him about hantavirus, because often people like keep their records in their garages and they're like mice running by. And he was like, yeah, that's something I encounter like regularly that I wouldn't have known beforehand. That's the kind of thing that's just easier to get from someone who's been on the front lines of a thing.
Yeah, hard work being a librarian, dangerous work. Something that I wanted to talk about is when you're thinking about who to interview for a story, it's always important to consider the equity and representation of the guests that you're getting. So basically, just like try not to always get a white man. The fact is that if you, just because of historical reasons, if you think of a topic and you do a Google search, there's a good chance that the top hits are going to be people with a lot more privilege and maybe won't be the best representation. So as an example, last season we did a story about grizzly bears in the prairies. And I asked around, I have a lot of friends in conservation community, and people were like, oh, you should talk to FRI Research, Gordon Stenhouse, who is actually, I think, an Emerald finalist. Or Scott Nielsen at the U of A has a great research program. And they would be great speakers, but what I wanted to do was try to dig a little deeper and find someone who hasn't had the opportunity to share their story. So with them, like with Scott Nielsen, for instance, I dug into his roster of grad students. And with FRI Research, I tried to find someone who works with Gordon, but hasn't really been in the media. And it can be tricky because, you know, people might be more nervous, want to defer to the authority figure in their office. So it took a little bit of convincing, but we managed to get Anya Sorensen from FRI on that story, and it was an amazing interview. It's also important with many stories in Alberta to have consider Indigenous perspectives. So we've had some really great stories where we've interviewed elders or knowledge keepers. But I think it's also important not to try and pigeonhole the Indigenous perspective and like think about other types of perspectives that we could have. So with that bear story, this isn't a perfect example, but for that bear story, we talked to Stuart Steinhauer, who is an artist. And so he had like a really different relationship to the bear, the knowledge of the bear, Indigenous knowledge of the bear. And for other live shows that we've had Emily Riddle and Hunter and Jacqueline Cardinal, who are also like artists, theater people, more radical perspectives. And so giving space for young people of color, women and non-male people to be guests is a really important part of hosting a platform.
I have one actual research I'm going to post in the chat to a website called 500 Women Scientists that if you're not sure where to start is a nice place to get started. I would encourage you to think about it in like a season-long or show-long perspective, though. Sometimes you just need topic-specific knowledge. Like we had an episode last year where we wanted to have people representing 4 different species in like a head-to-head competition of like, which is the most Edmonton species? And Trevor worked incredibly hard to find guests who could represent an American elm tree, the West Edmonton Mall cockroach, the ghost magpie, and the white-tailed prairie hare. And he found people who could represent all these species and knew a lot about them, but like it was very specific. So all the speakers happened to be white guys. Like, that's fine, but think about your show on like a big picture perspectives.
Yeah. I'd love to share a couple tips about doing interviews during the pandemic times, but I think we'll hold off on that, and maybe if that comes up in the Q&A, then we can talk about that more.